This new schedule board has had been released into production for couple of releases now, but we got good amount of feedback from the customers market that there are a lot of features that were not yet available on the new schedule board. As we've always been explaining through our documents and release plans, we've been working on pushing the features in multiple phases, multiple releases into the new schedule board. Now is a point where we have hit the feature parity with the old schedule board, and we've brought in all the heavy functionalities from the old schedule board that you were looking for. We've heard feedback from multiple customers that the schedule assistant find availability was not there, some settings were not there, and things like that. So in this call, we are going to talk about some of those things and what are some of the improvements that we made in the user experience, what are some of the functionalities that we have newly created for schedule board in this release. At the same time, we're going to spend some time to explain the behavior of the new schedule board, how it can be enabled on existing customers and their organizations environments. How is this going to get enabled on the newer organizations as well? So let's get into that. Now, as you see on the new schedule board, it functionally and behaviorally aligns with the old schedule board, but we made a lot of infrastructure improvements on how the schedule board is created. The performance had been our goal, and to make it stable, it had been our goal for the new schedule board. In the new schedule board, as you might have seen already, some of you might have used it. Now, the biggest thing that we brought in this wave or this release is the schedule assistant or the find availability functionality. When you select a requirement, and you need, as a dispatcher, you need to send the right eligible technician to your customer's location. You could, as a dispatcher, drag and drop the requirement onto the schedule board to create a booking. But if you need the system to give you the best recommendations, you could choose the schedule assistant functionality. And whenever you choose a requirement or an unscheduled work order, a find availability functionality would be seen as a button here. If you click on it, pretty much it loads your schedule assistant screen, which is a screen that is used for suggesting the right resources who could get this work done. As you see here, as you hover on some of these suggested time slots in the dotted boxes, you can see how the booking is going to look like. Once you see what works for your dispatcher or for your customer, you can click on that specific time, and you can see that the booking panel is open with the time and date selected accordingly. Once you make that decision of the start time, end time, and whatever works for your customer, you could go ahead and click on book or book and exit. What book would do is create the booking and keep you in the schedule assistant view, and it would show you the resources who could do the work pretty much like here. For example, if I select another resource here, you can see that the booking panel is still shown. And now you could either exit the schedule assistant or create another booking. In this case, I'm going to exit the schedule assistant, which puts me back into the schedule board mode, pretty much like this. And you can see all the bookings existing here. Similarly, the schedule assistant is used in multiple functionalities like rebooking to a different resource and a different time, or rebook to a substitute, find a different resource who can get this work done. So I can click on book and book substitute. That opens up your schedule assistant experience, and it's going to suggest who are the other resources who could perform this job for this job. So you could see all the resources who are available, and you can select a time slot, and that's going to create a booking. So basically, you can click on book and book substitute and exit. Now, that was what we were talking about, the schedule assistant. Now you also have a functionality to move a booking to a different resource. You can refer to the one of the resources available on the schedule and then move the booking. Once you click on update, it's going to move your booking to that respective resource. In this case, we moved that booking to Matt or Matthew. This is more of an a reassignment of the booking to a different resource quickly if you want to do it. And by default, it'll just show you the resources who are doing this work. But in case you need to see all the resources in the organization, you could choose to switch that, and then it'll show all the resources in your organization, regardless of where they are. That's another improvement that we made, and obviously a lot more changes and gaps that we filled in the new schedule board are around details view. We've so Similar to in your old schedule board, when you have a booking or a resource and you hover on it, you see a certain list of details can be shown in the tooltip. But if that space is not sufficient for you to display more fields, like you have 10 more fields to be displayed, in that case, you could leverage the details view. So details panel is where you can see those details. It shows no item is selected. Now, if you choose any of the booking, all these details could be displayed, and if you need more fields to be displayed, you can still add them. This is governed by a view that is behind it, so you can configure a view or a booking view to be shown here and show as many fields related to bookings as needed here. This works as a multi-purpose pane where it shows displays details for any type of data. Basically, it could be a booking, or it could be a resource where you can see more details about the resource, or it could be a work order / requirement where it shows more details about that specific resource. Now, with that, the details view works in line with how it used to work on the old schedule board, but it is much easier to use. And in case you need this record to be open, you can click on the pop-up, and then that would open that requirement record for you to make any changes that are needed. Uh, Another thing that we've also implemented in the new schedule board is booking alerts. Booking alerts are nothing but the activity type called book alert, which could be created on a specific booking. So if you click on view, it shows the booking alert that has been created in regards to a specific booking. You could either snooze them or dismiss them. You could dismiss a booking alert by just clicking on dismiss, or you could snooze them to a later time in the day by choosing a different time, and then you can snooze them for that duration. And within 5 minutes, the booking duration would still show up and pop up on those bookings. As you see here, uh, that gives an icon or a tile with the booking. Now that we dismissed it, we wouldn't see it. And now that's booking alert. Previously, booking alerts were on different UIs, and they were a little disjointed, but in now all of the existing booking alerts will be shown on the booking alert panel, and you can also create a new booking alert right from that same panel. There were a few other functionalities on the old schedule board, like a move bookings. You can choose a set of bookings, and then you could move these bookings from one day to other. Let's say in this case, I would choose to move all the bookings that have a state of canceled. I'm going to choose that and move them. With that, these bookings can be moved to a different day. Once that is done, you can move more bookings, or if you're done, you could actually close the window. Now you can see that more booking has moved my cancel booking over to the next day. That's the move bookings. Similarly, we've also brought back the print schedule board functionality. A lot of the dispatchers and the companies who did not yet use the mobile application for the adoption, they still use print settings. And looking at our data, we realized we still need this, and then we created the print functionality. So printing this would print the schedule board on your printers, and you could save that data, and you could use it on a whiteboard or hand it off to your technicians. Now, along with that, what we've done is that we've changed the way how the driving directions were calculated from the previous schedule board. Now, with this, you could get the driving directions from a certain location to a certain location. For example, the driving directions to this specific booking can be retrieved by clicking on get driving directions, which means it gives the driving directions for the resource from the previous known location to the next booking location. Similarly, a resource can The resources driving directions for a complete day can also be retrieved. In this case, we are trying to get the driving directions for Jorge for the day of 9:13. And once we click on that, we would show you the directions from his starting location to the next four customer work locations. And then at the end, the technician would be traveling back to his resource end location, which is where he started his day at. With this, we've removed the barriers from the old schedule board where we used to have a dialogue experience, which was a little difficult. Now we moved to the native Bing experience where you could just focus on getting the driving directions to the next booking or to or all the bookings for that resource. Mm, With that, I'll move on to the next functionality, which is full screen. Full screen or the focus mode is something that we used to have in the old schedule board. We've drafted a similar functionality, but this time we made it better by removing all the browser tabs and the sitemap so that that extra space could be used by the dispatchers to see more amount of data and just focus on what is important for them. We've also brought a lot of extensibility from the old schedule board. And in case you are an existing customer, you have a lot of extensibility built on your old schedule board, you can easily switch to the new schedule board, and all of that extensibility would be carried forward to the new schedule board. For example, you could have customized the filters or the resource cell template or your work order information to be shown on your bookings, or on the customized tooltips that you could show more information about your work order. All of that is natively built into the new schedule board. And when you switch to the new schedule board, you would bring all your existing tabs along with all the extensibility. So you don't have to recreate any of your tabs or extensibility. Your be it a booking rule where we support JavaScript to support your extensible business logic, you could still use that on the new schedule board without making any changes. Similarly, client-side extensions is something. Client extension framework is something that we supported on the old schedule board, will also be supported on the new schedule board. At the same time, we would be supporting all your existing client extension frameworks that you have built on the old schedule board. Now with that, what we have done is all your settings can be visualized in the board view settings. These are all the settings that are specific to your Gantt view or board view here. And you could see we've made them easier to understand and group them and removed certain unrelevant or irrelevant settings from this experience. And now you could open the tab settings from right here, or you could also open them from the each tab. Each tab has its own contextual menu where you can click on the board settings and it opens up the settings grouped in a better way. Now there are a lot of settings that are supported on the schedule board to make it flexible for you. And now we are trying to group them in an easier way for everyone to understand it. And you could see that all the settings of the schedule board can be accessed right in this. You could see the descriptions of each of these settings right here in the product so that it is easier for you to use them and configure them as needed. You could also change the default settings which are used for the system so that any changes that are made to the default settings will be the settings of every new tab that are going to get created in the future. So you would still have access to all your settings and you can see all of them here. Now we can see that we've configured your custom web resource panel, and you can open that custom web resource panel. This is a sample HTML that we've used here, but if you have your own custom web resource, it could be a JavaScript, it could be a Power App, Canvas app, you could continue to use it on the new schedule board without making any changes. Some other usability improvements that we made on this board are basically when you drag and drop a requirement, we previously introduced the drop shadows. Those drop shadows still exist to give you an idea where this booking is going to get snapped to. And when you drop them, we create a temporary booking right away. As you see, a spinner is shown, and once the booking creation is complete, you will see that the spinner is gone. Now that helps in faster operations for the dispatchers when they don't have to wait for the bookings creation to complete, but rather they could move on to the next work order and start working on it. This especially is very helpful when the duration of the work orders are or the projects are much longer in time, where the creation of the booking would take more than a few seconds, or 30 seconds, 20 seconds, based on the duration of the project task. Now with that, we've also made changes that when you move an existing booking, even then we show the drop shadow now, so that this experience would help you identify where the booking is going to get snapped to when it is being dropped. You can see the spinner being shown there, and then right after the changes are complete, you can see that the booking is snapped to. Similarly, if I do that again to a different resource, you would be able to see the drop shadow, and once you drop, you will see the spinner spinning, and then the booking snapped to that grid. Similarly, we made a few more changes. Like a lot of times when the customer or the dispatcher is working on a specific booking, they need to read more data about those bookings. So when they double click on the booking, it opens up the booking record in informed navigation, so that you're not taken away or redirected from the schedule board. So we've leveraged the main form dialog that has been introduced by the unified interface platform team in the schedule board as well. So you can open up a booking or a resource right from here, and it just opens the resource in that uh, main form dialog or a dialog screen without pushing you out of the resource, or without pushing you out of the schedule board. Similarly, on the requirement, you'll be able to open up the main form dialog right from there. Now, along with that, what we've done is the reflow scenarios. So whenever the schedule board is opened in a smaller screen, for example, as small as a 320 by 256 pixel, which is much lesser than the full HD resolution. Like on the screen that we're viewing now, it's a 1920 by 1080 screen, but oftentimes you'd be required to use them in much smaller screens. Now we have provided support for those smaller screens and smaller windows to be supported. For example, in this case, what I'm going to do is make the list much smaller, and you will see that the schedule board still resizes itself to adjust to that spacing and location. In the old schedule board, at this smaller resolutions, there is no way you could work on the new schedule board. Now, this is a main hindrance for us to achieve the accessibility at lower resolutions. This is also known as the WCAG 2.1 standard with a mass reference of 1.4.10 reflow scenario. Now with this, you can still use a lot of functionalities on the schedule board. For example, even in a much smaller resolution and screen, you would still be able to use settings. So in this case, I can still click on the board view settings, and it still shows me the screen with all the settings. I can still open up the tab settings, everything in related to that. I can still navigate to the different settings, even with the small form factor, and you can still see all of those details without any loss of data in that resolution. So the support for new schedule board to work on lower resolutions of up to 320 by 256 pixel is definitely a great improvement, and a great improvement on the accessibility of the product. Now, you can also see a lot more improvements. For example, we've just seen the settings, and then we've seen how each of the settings could play. But now updating settings on an existing tab is supported on the new schedule board, whereas creation of the new tabs is also supported on the new schedule board. This was something that we heard a lot of feedback from customers, that they had to move to the old schedule board, switch back to the old schedule board to create a new tab. So we brought this back into the new schedule board. Now with this parity, you would be able to create a new tab right on your new schedule board. You can configure all these settings. It is configured to its default values. You could make changes to the default values, but if not, you could just create the schedule board, and that creates the schedule board tab in the schedule board. Now, going back to our uh, resources up here. This is our tab that we were working on, and you can see that every time the new schedule board loads, it loads to the current time of the day. So you can see the current timeline up here that is still available, and it makes easier navigation for the dispatchers to move to. Now that we've talked about some of these improvements, I would like to talk about the enablement experience. With the new 2022 October 2021 October release wave 2, the new schedule board will be on functional parity with the old schedule board, which means that all the organizations or the customer environments which are created after the release of Wave 2 2021, each of those organizations will be enabled with the new schedule board as their default experience. What that means is once you log into your new organization, you will see that the new board is the default experience. Whereas for existing customers, they would still see that the old schedule board is enabled for them. To show that difference, I'm going to go back to the settings and make this change quickly and show this how it's going to look like for the existing customers. So if you're an existing customer in the system and you have already had your environment, now once you come here, you will see that the new schedule board will have a toggle. The old schedule board will have a toggle to enable the new schedule board, and there you will start seeing the messaging that the schedule board is will be deprecated in April 2022. This old schedule board is now scheduled to be deprecated in April 2022. After April 2022, for every customer, new or existing, there will be only one new schedule board available for them, enabled by default for them. So we would suggest you to move to the new schedule board as early as possible so you have enough time to test your business scenarios and get your users onto the new schedule board. How would we enable the new schedule board? It's very easy. As long as you have an org admin or an FS admin or your system customizer available in your organization. Anyone can enable this button up here. This is a user level setting. It does not enable for every user in the organization. So once we come here, you will see that the schedule board is enabled only for you. But if you want this the default to make this the default experience for all the users in the organization, then you could hit on this setting up here. You will see more resources where you can learn more about the new schedule board and the plan to deprecate the old schedule board. And then you can see that you would need the privileges to be able to edit these settings for all the users in the organization. If you are one of the org admins or field service admins or a system customizer, then when you click on go to settings, it would open up the resource scheduling settings or the scheduling parameters, and you would be able to enable the new schedule board. You can save and close this, and then what that would do is you can go back to your old schedule board, and you will see that the board will be enabled for all the users. I'm trying to refresh my screen to get the change reflected. Let me go back, take a quick look at the setting that we have. Oh, this is still in the off state. Now I'm going to save it. Now this is enabled, the new schedule board. Now I can go back to the schedule board. And we can go back to our demo tab. And you can see the data on your new schedule board. And now you see that there is no control to switch to the old schedule board. Your new schedule board is your default schedule board. You can also see that from the resource requirements. And if you click and open up any resource requirement, open resource requirements, I'm going to open up on one of these resource requirements. And if I click book button on this is going to open up the new experience, because we by default have enabled the The new schedule board, whenever you click book button on a requirement or a work order, it's going to open up in the new schedule board experience. And you can see all the suggested time slots up here. And once you click on them, the booking panel would open up with the book and exit button showing up there. You can still use all your filters pretty much with the same functionality as the old schedule board. You can also see that it supports the Gantt view and the list view, and just in case you need to rely on one of these views.